And we've had the roll call and no alternates are here tonight. So reading and approval of minutes of November 10th. Does anyone have anything on that? I didn't.
I just wanted to confirm that on page 3, that it was David who moved. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. I was looking at the I'm looking at the wrong one. Never mind. Scratch that. No comments.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the regular meeting minutes of 11/10/22.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Okay. Motion is carried. All right. Public communication. Anyone here that would like to communicate? All right, hearing none, why don't we go on to old business? So the first item on the agenda is 5B1, Emery Weisel, 7 Pheasant Run. This was a public hearing that we closed or we did not close?
Public hearing was closed.
It was closed, okay. So we need then to deliberate on that, right? And possible decision. So I've thought a great deal about this. And I suppose if the application was on a lot with 20 acres well off the road, I'd have a different opinion. And you know, I understand the major home occupation and people's need to make a living. But I wonder if anyone else had any input on that. I'm a little bit at a loss here.
Yes, you know, I had expressed some reservations as to whether this fit within the major home occupation at our last meeting. I have almost immediately after, or even during the meeting last week or last month, I concluded that yes, this fits within the definition of a major home occupation. It was a little bit. It took me a little bit to get there, but I think the language in the definition of major home occupation allows us to consider it. I think for me, I'd like to explore briefly. You know, Karen mentioned last month that she thought that maybe this was agriculture, and so I'd like to explore that with the commission a little bit to understand sort of what everybody feels, and does this fall within our definition of agriculture?
I looked into this myself quite a bit. Ty and I had a lot of back and forth. I certainly have a lot of thoughts about it. I don't think it's agriculture because it's really not being grown there. I mean, it's clearly I think the idea with agriculture is there's some sort of production going on that's related to, you know, pulling it out of the land. So growing a plant, growing an animal. I guess if I were to have a farm, an analogy, you know, you would say any sort of processing of agricultural material would be agriculture. That would imply that someone could open like a chicken slaughterhouse. Chickens are grown somewhere else. They're brought there to be processed. That would be an analogous to what's happening here. But I don't think it's agriculture either. That's a processing application. So I wouldn't look to agriculture as a way to say this is an agriculturally protected use as opposed to a major home occupation. That would just be my thinking on the matter. I really feel like the trees would need to come off the property as part of a forestry related agriculture based on all the reading I could do there.
I also don't really think it falls under the idea of agriculture. If it does, then anybody who had a sawmill and was commercially making lumber, that falls under agriculture, and I don't think it does. It's an industrial use, and bringing a product in to cut it up and then resell it. I don't think it falls under agriculture.
So for me, it was a lot of the considerations that as a special permit that we had to look at. One, the overall neighborhood compatibility was one. Whether the proposed use will have a detrimental effect on neighboring properties or on development of the district. And because of the size of the lots, the proximity of the neighbors, the sound level that's being generated, I think you could reasonably say that it may have a detrimental effect. So I was having a problem with that. Again, if this was on 30 acres and off the road, I think it's a clearly different issue, which is why this is a special permit. We have to consider the neighborhood.
I agree with that, Wes. I wanted to go back to the agriculture because it does talk about the production of lumber, and is firewood lumber. And I'm not sure the production or harvesting of, and there are several things that come ahead, but lumber. And I don't think that we can call this. I don't think that we can call this firewood lumber. I don't think this is forestry. I don't think it's a farm. So I'm falling with you and Adam and David that this is not agriculture, and therefore, Wes, I think you're on the right track, that we have to treat this as a special permit, as a major home occupation, the same way as it was applied, right? The applicant made an application for a major home occupation, and I think ultimately that's where it lands. So I think from there we have to go to the considerations of the special permit. We have to go to 1040 and we have to go to 1030 and decide whether the application sort of meets those criteria.
Yeah, I will say that our regulations could use a lot more fleshing out to provide us guidance in how we define these home application, these home-based businesses. Ty was kind enough to share a few regulations from some of our fellow communities, and they provide a lot more guidance to the planning and zoning boards or commissions to help us, so we're not just sort of floundering around in what a special permit allows for. It does. I think the expectation is that the activities, it's clearly secondary to the residential aspect, and I think this falls in that category without any issues. It's, I think, it's more of an intensive, productive activity than a lot of what I think people think of home occupations, where someone with a small home office, or they're doing something indoors, which is sort of quiet, and the regulations talk about minimizing things like traffic and the number of visitors and people who work on site. When you do have an activity like this, which has been described by at least one neighbor as extremely loud, and there's big activity going on, at least a few hours here and there, it seems like it is more suitable for larger lots if we were going to consider allowing this type of activity under this application. I would imagine if we were to write a regulation for a firewood processing plant or for a lumber plant, we would probably say things like it must be on a lot of a certain size, and it must allow for a certain type of traffic, and it must be quiet enough or far enough from the neighbors. And so while we don't have that regulation I'm aware of, I would certainly want to at least think about it as to whether or not we would consider when we consider this particular application. Maybe it's plausible that if we say it's maybe not suitable to be generally run as like a 9 to 5 business, I mean, we could certainly consider allowing it under some limited set of hours or scope or size as a way to allow it as a secondary activity on the property. Because if somebody is cutting firewood 8 to 5, 5 days a week, that makes it even harder to say it's secondary to the residential aspect. Anyway,
Sorry.
it's a
go ahead.
gap in our regulations we should certainly think about addressing for the future to provide some guidance around this, as more people may want to do larger home-based activities in the future.
So, well, one, I do think that I totally agree with you, David, that our regulations kind of leave us without guidance. I think that's somewhat purposeful. I think that the regulations do provide us with the tools to make a decision on any given property, because I think in our community, regardless of size of an actual lot, that each parcel is different, and you might have a small lot that backs up against state land, and then it wouldn't impact anybody. So I'm always hesitant to the more detail you put in regulations, the harder it is.
Well,
I'm a little torn on this whole application. One, because I'm wary about regulating away an activity that I would consider in a rural community to be the norm. But at the same time, I look at this lot, and it's very small in one of the few tighter knit areas, residential areas that we have in Kent. All the lots right around it are small, acre and a half. Everybody's living pretty close, as opposed to having a 5-acre lot next to a 5-acre lot, or against bigger lots. And when I look at the regulation, it asks us if the proposed use might have a detrimental effect on neighboring properties. It asks us if the nature and intensity of the operation involved with the use belongs or it will be in harmony with the area around it. And I don't see it working with either of those, because it's so tight. And when I look at the hours, it's not all year round, like Emery said. It's July. I think he said July through October. It's just a short number of months, but it's a lot of noise during the week, all day. And in today's world, people don't work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You work on the weekends, you work during the week, you take days off during the week. So I'm a little torn on it for those reasons.
Well, special permits become very difficult and a responsibility because we're called upon as a commission to make judgments. It's not even a decision, it's a judgment on whether it's appropriate or not appropriate, because this is a situation of appropriateness. So I don't take that lightly. I mean, it is making a judgment, but I think that's our charge.
I generally agree with Wes. You know, that's our charge. We have to make a judgment based on the guidance that's provided in our regulations, and if we carefully consider the parameters within the special permit regulations and in the site plan application regulations. So I think that's where we should go here. I looked at, you know, and I know that I'm not the only one, but I looked at the considerations in the RU1 district, and there's nothing that's allowed by right or by site plan approval, by right, by zoning permit, by site plan approval, or by special permit that comes close to this use, right? So that's the first conclusion that I reach. Which again drives us towards that special permit, and then I think we have to go through section 1040, which is the special permit, the considerations of the special permit, and for one of the first ones is it requires a site plan application, and a site plan application, if we just go there, which is on 10400. I'm sorry, 10300. And for me, the considerations which start at 10350, really, I mean, there's supplemental site plan considerations that start in 10355 on page 171. And general conformity of the site plan with the intent of the town's plan of conservation and development. I think that I'm not quite sure how this would fit or conform with the plan of conservation and development, except that plan of conservation and development really allows for that agricultural use and for that use to keep Kent rural. So I think it fits with the plan of conservation and development. The adequacy and access of fire, police, and ambulance service seems to be okay. I mean, it's that the roads there seem to be adequate. There's really no water or sewage disposal or treatment or other public facilities that are affected. There's no outdoor lighting. There's really no outdoor storage facilities, but maybe there should be. There's no signs, nor should there be. Traffic considerations. I think the applicant has demonstrated, or at least conveyed to us, that there will be no more than 2 trucks a day on any given day, all throughout the year. So that doesn't seem to be a big burden. The environmental considerations, I think, are a little bit more problematic. Right, there doesn't seem to be any silt fence. There doesn't seem to be any erosion controls or protection against things that are happening on that property going off onto the neighbor's property. There's certainly no screening. There's certainly no noise control. So those are my thoughts on the considerations of the site plan.
So Karen, you had some opinion on this last meeting. You want to?
Yes, I did, Wes. I felt everyone else should speak tonight because I spoke so strongly at the last meeting. Obviously, I've reviewed everything as well as you folks all have. And what I can gather from this is that this particular situation is not anywhere in our regulations that I can find. So I'm sure that's why Ty's suggestion, excuse me, that we do a special permit. Hold on. I think, see, I've got noise here.
I may have cats, but at least they're quiet, right?
Exactly. Exactly right. So I think I'm going back to my original concerns. Since we can't find a way to have this fit into what we have to work with, my two concerns are, how are we going to manage all the other dozen or so people in town who are doing this? I think that's my biggest concern. And the other concern I have, when I looked at the regulation, the special permit application, and reviewed the neighbor's concern, it's all about noise. Really, it comes down to the noise. You know what? I even took it a step further, because I don't have a lot of knowledge about these type of machines. So I went on YouTube and pulled up a demo on wood cutting machines, and I turned the volume up as loud as I could. And you know what? I didn't find it horrible. It's like a little buzz, okay? Regardless, the bottom line is, I think, the noise. And I suggest that perhaps we limit the hours of that someone can do this. Because I would like for someone on the commission to tell me how we're going to leave this with everyone else in town who's doing it. Are we going to wait until their neighbor says, hey, I saw this on planning and zoning, let's go complain about Joe Smith down the street who fires up his wood splitter every Sunday morning? And then we're going to have to taste it piece by piece by piece. And I don't think that's good. I just don't know what you're going to do about everyone else who's doing this. And PS, the other folks that are doing it are not very far from this site. I don't know of anyone in my little knowledge who has a big piece of property who's doing this. They probably are. But most of the people live on smaller lots, like 5 acres and less. So what are we going to do about them? How are they going to fit into this scheme? Because I really feel this is opening up a very big Pandora's box. I understand the neighbor's concern, but I have to tell you, after I looked at the map that Emery Whistle provided us, that he drew, those people are 350 feet away. I know from my experience as a real estate broker, I recently sold a property that had 100 acres, and the person purchasing it wanted to be away from the street and away from noise. And do you know that on a clear day, standing on the property, we could hear the road? So you're always going to hear something. I think our mission should be to control the noise somehow. I'm not really sure that the special permit description fits this scenario. I'd like somebody to tell me what you're going to do about everyone else who's doing it. I don't get it. And as far as agricultural use, maybe I was all wet on that. Maybe it's not a big enough production, or like you said, Matt, he's not harvesting the wood there. But I still believe in my heart that this is a country event. You know, it's a country It's a feature of country living. People split wood. And if you go to YouTube, I wish I could think of what it was. If you go and you listen to this machine, it's like a big chainsaw. It's not, I didn't think it was horrible. On the other hand, would I want to listen to it every day, you know, for hours and hours? Probably not. So I think that's where we can be effective in trying to make come up with a solution in this neighborhood. I would hate to see it completely banned, and I would hate to see it become an actual special permit that everybody in town now has to line up and get permission to do.
Are you talking about cutting firewood for sale?
I don't think it matters if you're cutting it for sale, if you're keeping it yourself. The only reason cutting
think
it for
that is the-
sale is probably more is because you're going to do it more.
Well, I think that is the big difference. That's
Well-
the definition of a home occupation. I
Okay,
think
well
if
then,
people want to cut themselves, 2 or 3 cords of wood
Well,
for the
yeah, but
winter,
look-
that's fine,
look-
but that's very
look, David,
different.
I have a fire going right now in my house, which I enjoy every evening. The gentleman who sold me this lives in South Kent on 2 acres. So are we going to go after him? Where am I getting my wood from? Where are these folks who are making this part of their income? Where should we put them? They could probably go to the commercial zone, but where? There's one fellow doing it in the industrial zone. Where is someone like Mr. Whistle supposed to go? He's just supposed to cease. And where am I getting my next cord of wood from? I'm serious.
I think it's a conundrum. I do think that there's a big difference between a commercial processor. I mean, look, I split about 5 cords a year. You know, my sons and I, and you can see it in front of my house. You know, they're stacked up behind my barn, and but you know, we do it. It takes an entire year to do it. It's spread out. And I think that's normal. And if Emery was splitting 4 cords, 5 cords for his own self, I wouldn't even, if the neighbors want to complain, I don't, they let them complain. He can split wood all he wants to on his property for his own home. But when you're doing it commercially and you're talking about 60 cords, I don't know how many cords it is, but is it 60 cords? Is it however much it is? It's a lot. And when you're that close to your neighbors and you're running a processor every day for that period of time, even though it's just a short number of months, I think that that's different.
Well, you just answered your own question, Adam, which just said you don't know how many cords of wood he does. Okay. So maybe the solution is to limit the hours. If everything else fits that Matt went over, all the other items, and the noise is the issue, then maybe we find that to be the compromise.
Maybe that's the right thing to do, is to limit the hours, and you know, and then Emery will have to figure out whether he can do it in those hours, if he can process enough.
Well, it
You know,
sounds like a solution to the conundrum, but it also sets a standard for others. If we would do that.
Our
Well-
position has always been, right, I'm sorry, was somebody else getting ready to say something?
No, I was just going to say, that's my number one concern, is how we regulate or control. I used the word police at the last meeting. What do we, in fairness to Emery Whistle, how do we handle all the other folks that are doing this? My guy that I get my wood from, he's pretty much in the same situation. There's a gentleman in my neighborhood who has a major production going on. So what do I don't know how to handle that.
Right.
so we've always said, right, so we have a set of regulations, and if it's permitted by the regulations, then it's permitted by the regulations. And if it's not permitted specifically by the regulations, and there's no provision for us, as there is in this case, we think, to approve some kind of use by a special permit, then it's not allowed. But we've always, this commission has always, for as long as I've been on it, not gone out and found people who are in violation of their, I mean, that's not part of our MO, right? We're not going out and policing, but if somebody comes to us with a complaint, somebody who's doing something that's not allowed by the regulations or allowed with a special permit, and they don't have a special permit, then we have to react to it. Right. So all of the other people who are having weddings, or they're doing whatever they are that could possibly be allowed by a special permit through this major home occupation outside, right? They could be having dinners outside, they could have concerts outside, they could be doing all manner of things. We have to take those on a case-by-case basis as they're brought to us through complaints. I mean, Donna never did, and Ty's not going to, I don't think, going to start driving around town in violation of zoning regulations.
And I guess I would also say, Karen, if there's a bunch of people doing it and we think it's appropriate for the town of Kent, then maybe we should just write a regulation for the rural zone that allows wood splitting, and then we can describe what an appropriate lot is for it and other requirements. But to just, I mean, we have a case, we have a application in front of us, and we have people in the public hearing telling us that it's an issue, and as a result, we do have to do something.
So the great thing about a special permit is it allows us to set some limitations or not allow something because it doesn't work on that property. It's not setting a precedent. If we let Emery have his major home occupation here, it doesn't mean that everyone else gets to have their home occupation, because each property is different. And if we don't allow Emery to have his major home occupation here, I also don't think it impacts any other property, because the great tool for a small town of a special permit is that it allows us to look at each property differently, in each application differently.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I am generally not a fan of allowing subjectivity into our decisions. I know there has to be some subjectivity, and that's what the purpose of the special permit is. I'd prefer for it to be black and white, and we can say that's allowed and that's not allowed. But I want to finish up the regulation discussion. So we went through 10.330. I'm sorry, 10.300, and now I want to go through 10.400, which is the special considerations of the special permit, and 10.440 1 through 11 are considerations that we want to make sure the application addresses. So I want to go through those quick. If you guys would just bear with me. Is the proposed use or activity consistent with the purposes of the regulations? Maybe. Have appropriate considerations been given to the protection, preservation, and enhancement of natural, scenic, or historic unique resources? I don't think so, but I don't think there's particularly too many natural, scenic, or historic or unique resources on that lot.
Does not apply.
Whether or not the proposed use will have a detrimental effect on neighboring properties. I think it has the potential to have detrimental effect on neighboring properties, but I think we can overcome that. Suitable location for use. It's probably not the best location for that use. Have there been appropriate improvements made? In relation to site characteristics in the style of our buildings and immediate area and the immediate and existing desirable future character of the neighborhood. I think this has to do with building improvements, so I don't think that's germane. Suitable transportation conditions, I don't think that's germane. Adequate public utilities and services, I don't think that's germane. Long-term viability, it's probably viable long-term. Nuisance avoidance,
There you go.
probably not. It probably doesn't avoid nuisance. The plan of conservation and development, is it in accordance or facilitates the achievement of one or more of the goals, objectives of the plan of conservation and development? As we said before, it probably does. It's probably okay. Mitigation, have adequate provisions been made to moderate or mitigate neighborhood impacts? It probably haven't, but that's probably something that we could chase down with some conditions on the approval. And then on 10.450, the 10 design considerations, I don't think there's really any design. There's any design here, so the considerations they're so all in, my feeling is that this is a really intense use for this property, right? It's intense, and I don't think that something having been done or been in operation for any length of time qualifies it as being, permitted because they've been doing it for so long. So that he's been doing it for 5 years, so he's been violating the rules for 5 years, and that's for me, that's not a good argument. If I were going to feel comfortable approving this special permit, it would have to be that we have to mitigate the noise. We have to regulate the hours and the days of operation. We have to insist on fencing and screening. We have to insist on some erosion control on whatever the low part of the property is inside the fence or inside of the landscape screening, so that nothing can migrate off of this property into another one.
Oh, it does.
But if we look at the site plan that was submitted, and I think we had 4 comments from the public. We had 2 from residents at Studio Hill Road, and I think 2 Pheasant Run Road. At least one of the complainants, people that were concerned with the use, the processor, as described, is like 108 feet from their window, because the processing is in the front near the road. And I think the other person who had a concern was also Studio Hill Road. Just looking at the property, it is a very small lot. It's in the front setback, essentially. I guess it's to be close to Pheasant Hill Road, so it's easy to get wood there. If we were going to start to mitigate some of the things Matt requested, in this particular lot, the back looks like it's abutting, woods, and it would certainly be farther from other houses. The question is, that now you would be required the property owner to add some road and again, fencing and screening, moving it to the back to kind of, approximately double the distance from where he's processing, which is the noisy machine, to his other nearby neighbors. And then, I said we would probably also need to put in some restrictions on total number of hours per day, a late enough start and an early enough finish, so it's not impacting people's pleasant, quiet enjoyment in the mornings and the late evenings. I agree with Matt. It's really tough to fit this on a lot this size with people that close. It's a challenge. If this was a 5-acre lot or 10-acre lot, it would be just dramatically easier. The sound is 4 times quieter each time you double the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Having been near one of these machines recently, because they were processing on the road, it would be, this would be very unpleasant to be listening to for a couple months at a time, even if it was just 3 or 4 days a week. It would certainly be a challenge to live close to it. And again, talking about people doing this as a major home occupation, so 2 or 3 months, significant amount of wood, versus somebody doing 3 or 4 cords for the winter, or maybe they do 2 weeks worth and they sell a couple cords to their neighbors, in which case I don't think it'd be major anymore.
As Karen, I'm someone who is sympathetic. I'm sympathetic to people trying to make a living. and there is this area is a rural type of use. And there's a demand. People burn a lot of wood here. And I think the point is well taken, where, you know, this is typically where it takes place on, you know, smaller lots with people trying to do it. So, you know, there's the give and take, you know, and some of the points here are viable, some of them are not. So, you know, limiting hours is limiting noise, or the time duration. It is somewhat of a compromise. That's the way I would see it.
I also just want to say, you know, on behalf of Emery, he has tried to find a commercial location or a large lot that he could affordably rent. And that doesn't seem to exist. He has tried for years. He's tried very hard, and it's just not there. Our industrial zone is tiny, and there's just nowhere for him to do it.
And he's not alone. This is why the gentleman I buy wood from has also, I don't even think he has 3 acres. So that's another one of my points. I think the best thing for us to do, I guess, is to allow the special permit with certain conditions. And then hang on to your hats, because there'll be more of this.
All right, so what do you guys all think about I mean, one of the complaints was that the operation was encroaching upon and even exceeding, you know, bleeding across the property line, the property boundary. Does it make sense to include some kind of setback, you know, to have them conform to the structure setbacks that are in place already in the regulations?
Well, Matt, what are those? Because I'm looking at the site plan that Emery provided us with. It's hand drawn, I realize, but it says log stockpile, split wood, log stockpile, which is against the property line. And it seems like it's there's a wire fence there. So maybe that all needs to be screened. But why is stocking logs a problem for a neighbor?
I don't think that the stockpiling of logs was a problem for the neighbor. I thought that the neighbor said that, at least at that time, one of the piles was actually on his property, not on Emery's. It had crossed the line.
Okay, so he needs to establish actual pins where the property line is, meaning Emery, and then keep his logs on his own side. But I don't see where logs piled up should be a problem for anyone. And it looks to me like, unless I'm reading this wrong, guys, he's got the wood processor way the hell across. It's on the other side of the property, as far as he can get from the neighbor's line.
Oh, I don't know, if you look at the site plan, Karen, look at the site plan and scroll down to, you'll see the picture of Emery's house. You'll see where the processor is and where the piles are. It's a little easier than looking at the hand drawing, and then looking at both together is helpful. But you get to see an actual picture of what's going on.
Yeah, it seems to me that by utilizing some kind of setback, you allow a buffer. I mean, how big is the lot that's right next door at 23 Studio Hill Road. I mean, it's not a tremendous lot either.
I suspect they're all about the same size.
About the same, yeah, it's about an acre.
So it
I
looks
see
like-
the processor is like right, it's, I don't know, 15 feet off the Pheasant Road line to one end of it. And then like I said, that's the one that's about 100 feet from the window of the other property. It's hard to tell exactly, but it's like maybe 50 feet off the property line.
Look, the whole issue here is that it's a small lot next to a bunch of small lots.
Yeah.
He can't really get far enough from a neighbor. I think it was David, you were saying, what if he was in the opposite corner, and he'd have to build a road, and it seems like that backs up more on the woods, but then you have that other neighbor right there. And so I don't know where he could move this that would be better than right there. I don't, I mean, where do you go that gets you get further from one neighbor and closer to the next neighbor?
Well, the reason he's doing it right there is because it's closer to the road. He's got a driveway already. He comes in, he dumps,
Yeah.
he dumps stockpiles in there. I mean, it's right next to that other house. It really is right next. I mean, it's really. I mean, how would it be? I mean, I wouldn't like it, and I don't want to be subjective here, but that's what I'm being forced to do. I wouldn't like a giant pile of logs in my sight from my backyard. I go and I look in the backyard, and I look across the property, and there's machinery running. I wouldn't like it. And I'm, somewhat tolerant and definitely a proponent of rural living.
I think when we live here in Kent, we're going to hear stuff during the week or during the weekends, and you're going to hear tractors running and people cutting down whatever. And you hear blasting and you hear all this stuff, but it's all relative to its proximity to you. And when you have constant noise that is that close to you, that noise is much louder. It's constant noise.
Absolutely, and it's right there. If I worked from home, and every day from 7:30 until noon, I decided that I should be running my tractor because I had something to mow, I'm sure that my neighbors wouldn't be happy about that. So if we're gonna do it, then we have to limit the site, we have to limit the noise, and we have to limit the time, I think.
Limit the time, require screening. I don't think we can control everything else.
I mean, I suppose it would be up to Emery. I wonder if he put a bit of a solid fence behind his log piles, if that would also deflect some of the noise that's getting pushed over to that neighbor. I mean, it does look like there's a bunch of trees there. But
Yeah, and I think, Adam, we're gonna tell the applicant what we think what he should do in order to comply with a special permit that we're going to grant. And so, Karen, what does a fence or what does screening look like for you? Is it all four sides? Is it three sides? Is it screening within a certain distance of the next property?
Yeah, it's screening between your property line and the neighbor, and it comprises of a fence and a row of trees, maybe fast-growing pines or something, along that fence line.
And is it just that fence? Is it just that property line? That's the property line that separates?
Well, I mean, I think in this particular case, that's all that's necessary, but I don't know.
We would, if this were a pile of something else, I could see us requiring a bit of screening on the road. So you've got kind of like a backwards L where you come down from Bit Drive along the property line and about halfway through the other property line. Again, like a solid 7-foot wooden fence. I mean, it's going to reflect the noise back the other way.
But a 7-foot fence has to be within the setbacks.
Yeah, well, does it? I thought if it was on a property line.
Be off the property line.
7 feet is considered a structure.
I was gonna say, we need to keep it under 6 feet.
Under 6
Or
feet, right? 6
It
feet.
just becomes an onus.
Yeah. So you have a 6-foot solid wood fence that kind of screens the whole operation from the road and from the adjacent property. And then, visually it's kind of protected from the road across the street, and there's enough trees and stuff in the way so the people to the north don't see it. Actually, I don't know if that's north, whatever direction that is.
The east, I think it's to the east, right?
Yeah, kind of northeast looks like.
There's no reason why the neighbor who is unhappy with the noise couldn't plant himself some fast growing pines or trees or whatever. And that way the two of them together would maybe soften the blow a little bit.
I don't think we can ask somebody else to make changes.
Well, if I was the neighbor and I didn't want to look at it and I don't want to hear it, that was what I would do.
I don't think pines are a noise block, unfortunately.
No, a concrete block wall would be.
It's also a big expense, depending on who the neighbor is, to
Yeah.
ask them to spend or her to spend, a couple $1,000 planting a few trees because somebody else is doing something on their property.
Okay, I'm just suggesting that would be an extra layer of insulation.
It
And
would.
I just remembered Emery's in landscaping, so I'm sure he can figure out what would work there.
Yeah.
Well, one easy solution to setback is to require that all storage and production is contained within the setbacks.
Yeah.
What is the setback on the front and side then in R1? I don't know off the top of my head anymore.
Ty, do you know that, what the setbacks are?
It's, I had that down.
Thought it was 40 and 30.
It's in a rural zone, it's typically 40 front yard, 30 sides and rear. Yeah.
Right.
It would be incredibly difficult for him to, 40 feet is piling the wood on the roof of his house.
Well, it's not quite that bad, but the operation would be very close to his. It would be essentially exactly next to the driveway. You'd have to move the whole thing up,
Right.
but it could fit there. I mean, he'd have the pile of logs looking immediately out of his front door, basically, but he'd have room there, I suspect. It would put the onus of managing a pile of logs directly on Emery for certain.
And that's not subjective. That is a definitive dimension of which we have assigned to setbacks in a building zone.
They're 40, 30, and 30. 40 for the front, 30 for the sides, and 30 for the rear.
Right.
So this would be the side, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And the front, which it really would be the front because he's putting it right up against the road, which is the front yard setback.
If you have the site plan, the firewood pile is roughly 30 feet. So you just imagine moving that diameter closer to his driveway and in about the same amount. So yeah, he'd have to move the operation right next to his own driveway up and to the left for the whole thing.
And thinking about the setback, does that resolve the noise issue, or is a more solid barrier better?
No, only size of the property pertains to.
I don't think that you can move the operation anywhere on the property except to the other side of the house that will maybe affect the noise for the one neighbor, but then it's closer to the other neighbors. Again, it's a very small lot.
Right, but the other neighbors have said that there's just, and I don't, honestly, I don't know which ones have said they're in favor of the operation, but move the operation on the other side where
The problem is that the special permit lives with the property. So, in 10 years, if somebody's on the other side, Emery's cutting wood, and we have somebody else complaining, that doesn't really solve the problem in the long term.
what does everybody think about the hours of operation?
To me, that's the most reasonable restriction that we can apply here. And, make it fairly onerous, a couple hours a day
10 to 2?
or something like that.
I think we have to, I mean, if we're gonna look, if we want to deny this, fine. But honestly, we can't expect anybody to process wood for 2 hours a day. It's got to be at least half a day. There's no way that he can take his guys and get them going on something for 2 hours.
Okay, well, 10 to 2 is 4 hours.
Okay, but it's got to be it's
almost
got to be at least half a day, and maybe a few days a week. Maybe it doesn't have to be every day for the neighbors. And I feel like, if we're gonna allow this major home occupation, then we have to write a special permit that reasonably allows him to conduct business.
Yeah, I'd say, sure. Yeah, which we don't want to deny it by default, right? And so that's certainly not my intent. But my intention is to make it so that it fits within some reasonable my reasonable understanding of the regulation and my reasonable understanding of how neighbors are supposed to behave around each other, right? So everybody should be generally allowed to use their property as they see fit, as long as they're not impacting others. And this is obviously impacting others, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it. So I like the idea of a couple of days a week, certainly not weekends. I tend to agree with Adam. That's if you got workers, you want them to start first thing or you want them to finish the day, right? So what does that mean? 11 to 4? Does it mean 8 to 1? But I think we're sort of honing in on some kind of a few days a week, half a day each day.
Well, again, we are making a judgment.
Agreed. Absolutely. Absolutely, Wes. You're absolutely right.
But that's our purview.
Wes, this is Alice. I've listened to everybody and agree with everybody, and you're all smarter than I am. I'm not sure that the word judgment should hold us back. At the end of the day, ever since I've been involved in this business, we are legitimate planning and zoning for the protection of the health and safety of our community. And I believe that this particular operation, business, whatever you want to call it, threatens that. Maybe that's judgment, maybe it's not, but it does threaten it. And we've been sitting here talking about it. If it were a bigger piece of property, it wouldn't be as threatening, but it is threatening to the health and welfare of the community. So our way to deal with it is to come up with a special permit. And you've listed 4 things, maybe there should be 6 things that we specify, whether it's setback, the height of the fence, the hours of operation. I don't think those are judgments. Those are just actual practical ways to protect the health and safety of the community. And I have no problem with it being, we can sit here and debate all day, whether it be 6 hours or 5 hours or 3 hours. We're not running the business. Okay. We're protecting the neighborhood. And we don't want to run him out of business. That's why we're trying to do this. We're trying to let him have his business in such a way that it protects the health and safety of the neighborhood.
Sure.
So I'm not sure that you need to keep defending judgment here. I think that it goes well beyond judgment.
Right. I mean, that's a word.
Okay, it's a word.
We're setting criteria With-
It's setting criteria is what we should be. That's what we should be doing, is setting criteria to protect the neighborhood.
Right.
And I don't know who's more expert on setting those criteria. We can, maybe we should come up with several options and then we all decide whether it's 5 hours or 2 hours. I don't know.
In the public hearing, does anyone recall any specifics on how long Emery said that he did this during the season?
He says it in the application.
Yeah, he says it in his description of operation.
Right,
Yeah.
That was in last month, right?
right.
5B1, 6A, no, I'm sorry, it was agenda item 6A2 statement of use from,
Yeah.
I think I missed that the first time.
actually, it's, actually, Ty, you added that.
So what he writes, he says number 2, a rough time frame for the processor. It runs usually after 8 or 8:30 in the morning and usually no later than 5 p.m. during the week from August to October. I usually only use the processor 1 to 2 days per week, with some weeks not at all, depending on my workload.
So it goes from August until March or April. So it does go, I mean, it looks like it's at least,
Oh, winter.
yeah, it's like 7 or 8 months, 1 to 2 days a week. Otherwise, it sounds like five days a week with an occasional 6th day. I mean, if we do any sort of meaningful restriction, it clearly would have a major impact on his business.
Yeah. Well, I think we're trying to write a regulation that will allow him to continue doing this. He won't, if we curb his hours, he won't be able to continue processing the amount of wood that he is processing now. But that is what we may have to do, and that, as Al said, as much as we want to make sure that Emery can continue working, we also have a bunch of neighbors around him that we are supposed to be protecting also. So I think we have to set some limits that we think are reasonable for the neighbors, and Emery has to see if he can make the processing business work for him within that.
I agree. So how does everybody feel about no more than 5 hours a day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. And no more than 3 days a week? And I'd like to specify those days as Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so that we're not so he can work any 5 hours on anytime between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. and he can work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
So he gets 15 hours a week to run his business on the property effectively.
Well, it's not, that's that part of the business. The other part is delivering the wood and
Oh, you're talking about just the processor.
that's part of the business, but not all.
I think what we're limiting is the processor part of the business, which is the noise, which is the part of the business that bothers the neighbors, and his delivering and loading and delivering. I don't think we have to regulate that.
Karen, you looked like you weren't, that you thought that was too limiting. I mean, would you suggest that 5 days? a week?
Karen, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think 15 hours a week is enough to run a business at anything. So I think the 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. works, but I think he should have more hours. You got to keep in mind, from what he's told us, what he starts this, August, and he runs it until November. That's not very much, that's not very many weeks.
No, I think he runs it until April.
March. Yeah, March or April.
Okay, I'm wrong. Okay, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. But I still don't think 15 hours a week is enough to run anybody's business. And you have to remember that he's a part of the neighborhood too. I mean, we're very conscientious about all the other neighbors, and so far we've only had 2 that really complained. I just think that if the noise is the issue, then we limit the hours. But I don't,
Well, I think we're trying to strike a balance.
yeah.
I
But
mean,
he's
there's
gotta live
only-
with it. Everybody's gotta live with this, including him, and it's probably, maybe it defeats the whole purpose if he can't work enough hours. I don't know. That's probably a question for him.
So we heard from 4 neighbors, the 2 to the south who are next to it, both were very, they clearly made their opinions known. And I think one person who lives at the property, one person who lived to the northeast, were supportive of it. I guess the challenge is if somebody's, furiously writing code in their bedroom for, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, they don't impact their neighbors. And if somebody's, baking cookies and running a cottage food business in their kitchen, they don't impact their neighbors. I'm very sympathetic here. It's very difficult to understand how this business is going to be compatible from a noise perspective at the intensity he probably needs to run it.
I'm just reading this. He says, I typically do not start making firewood until sometime in mid to late August, usually for only 1 to 2 days per week.
Yeah, read the previous paragraph. That's where it's the longer hours.
Yeah. And the next one, number 2, it says, so I'm just trying to figure out what his hours are, because then 2 says the processor runs basically from 8 to 5 from August to October. But he only uses it 1 to 2 days per week. So I don't know that we're limiting him so much. If we gave him 3 days per week, but shortened the hours, he seems
Yeah.
to be using the processor 1 to 2 days per week. Right? If you look at 2. He's saying a rough time frame that the processor runs is usually after 8 to 8:30 to usually no later than 5 p.m. during the week from August to October. I usually only have the processor for 1 to 2 days per week, with some weeks not at all, depending on what his workload is.
Well,
So,
we're sort of limiting his, I mean, I like it. I think it fits within the business model. What it doesn't satisfy is his ability to run his crew up to his house when they've got nothing else to do, and he can keep them busy for the balance of the day, which is an important consideration, but I'm not sure that should be our consideration. But I think that I think that we should limit the number of, I think we should limit the days so that the neighbor doesn't have to keep track, or we don't have to keep track of, how many days he's worked this week and how many days he worked last week. And I like the idea of I'm even okay with him being able to run that business from 8 till 5, not limiting the hours. 8 till 5, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That gives him, that sort of satisfies Karen.
The business or the processor?
The processor. Or it's, he can, I think he can drop logs off, right? Because that's not an all day affair. But if he's processing, running the equipment, processing lumber or firewood, it should be limited to a couple of 3 days a week.
and just so everybody knows, when he's running the processor, it's the processor and an excavator, I believe, because nobody's picking up those logs and putting them onto the processor themselves. They
It's the equipment.
need another machine to do that.
Right.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe, look, we can make a special permit for him, and if the limitations that we put on it seem to be too much, he can come back for a modification and tell us, look, this is not, what you've done is you've made it impossible for me to do this. I would need, I really need you to reconsider this and I'd like to modify it to this. And he could do that, but we can't talk to him at this point. So we can't get information and have a conversation with him at this point, but we can
Right.
move forward to
So what
getting a
I'm,
special permit, and he can always come back and modify it.
right. So what I'm hearing from everyone is that we would be hesitant to deny this use because of its need, its usefulness. In a way, it's appropriate, except for the noise factor. We respond to the noise factor by limiting the hours of operation. So again, we're trying to strike a balance and not deny this. That's what I'm hearing from the commissioners.
I agree, Wes. I also feel mostly, I feel, strongly is probably too strong of a word, but I feel like we should have some kind of a visual barrier. We should have the
Yep.
fencing and screening, because the fencing will mitigate the noise and will mitigate the impact to the neighbor. So I think we should have fencing on both sides, on the roadside and on the property line to the, let's call it the south, right? Not quite south. Where to, in the immediate vicinity of where they're where he's doing the processing, and then maybe have some visual screening for where he's got some logs piled. So I think those two things are important to me.
Right. So I think it's probably important, just in general, which is not being subjective, is to establish those yards, side and rear, not front, because that's where he's coming into, and that's where the driveway is. If that became an obstacle, as Adam suggested, he can come in and say, well, this doesn't work, and this is why.
Right.
So
Go ahead, Wes.
Ty, we are close to being at our time limit on this, or we have more time. We're certainly not going to make another meeting.
Yeah, I think you can continue this one more time, because you just closed the public hearing at the last meeting, so you still have,
We had 65
Sure.
days.
yeah, so you have like another
This-
30 days.
This can go to the, so what would be great if we can give Ty a little more guidance, she can create a resolution for approval. And especially the special permit limitations that we want to put on it. And we can look at it next week and
Next month.
vote on it.
I would just prefer that the language not call out the processor specifically, but call out like specific ongoing noise, because what I don't want to do is try to micromanage it. And if he says we can only run the processor 3 days, and then he uses Monday and Friday to use chainsaws to prep logs and excavators to move everything around, which are just as noisy. And I think the goal is we're trying to limit the kind of ongoing impact to major impact of loud work. And that's what we should try to craft the resolution of approval to. I think that plus the screening in respect of the setbacks is what I would want to support.
I think we have to be sort of conscious of the setbacks, because we're gonna squeeze his business right out of there. There's not gonna be enough room to do what he's doing.
Well,
But
if
I
we
don't
allow-
know, I don't know what the answer is, but like you said, Adam, he's, it's gonna be on top of his house.
Right, if we had him put up a fence on that in between his on his property line, if it's 6 feet, he can put it on his property line, I believe. Ty,
Right.
you'd have to correct me if I'm wrong,
Right,
But as long as it's not 7 feet where it's a structure, if it's 6 feet or less, then he can put it right there on the property line. And then we don't have to worry about the setbacks because we've created a barrier. And he can't cross that barrier. That barrier, like we've already said, will help with the noise. It'll help with the visual aspects. And then he has, maybe it'll even provide him with more room to work, you know.
Yeah, I would be in favor of some language that said, you know, a physical barrier fence not more than 6 feet high from the driveway heading southeast to the property line, and then turning and running along the property line towards the west, northwest, for a distance to ensure that it's screening at least the stockpiles.
I do think that it shouldn't be, you know, it should not be a chain link fence. It should, you know, it has to be a solid fence that you can't really see through.
Right, a visual barrier.
right.
And are we saying that if we've got the fence, then we don't need the landscaping buffer? That the fence will satisfy that.
It seems like there's already a lot of trees there. I think the fence would help provide additional visual and audio barrier. Because it does seem like there's all sorts of stuff there. I can't tell exactly what it is. Maybe from the photos we can, but
Yeah.
I don't see the if we, you know, a fence is actually a considerable expense. And I don't see if we haven't put up a solid barrier fence, why we would also need them to add trees or shrubs in addition.
No, I think that's belt and
I
suspenders.
would agree with that. You know, that's not needed.
Or some combination of both, do you think, or just the fence? You know, because if he goes past, you know, a certain distance down that property line, if you look at that picture, that's the photos, the 682 photo, not the photo 2, but the photo that shows a view past the mini excavator, past that dense piece of you know, visual barrier. And then there's a row of looking like, you know, the hardwoods, which are open into the trees. Do we need to ask for some landscaping that goes past that, or is the fence that goes along and visually obscures the operation enough?
So I think it would be very useful for Ty to draft a resolution containing some of that, and then for us to take time to study and deliberate on that next time.
I'll do that. Just for clarity, so you would like the equipment operation limited between Tuesdays and Thursday, between 8 and 5, but only 5 hours per day, any 5 hours, correct?
I think we backed off of that 5 hour per day limit.
Okay, so it's just 8 to 5, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, and then you want a 6-foot solid barrier on 2 lengths, the 2 sides, the southeast and the northwest.
Before we do that, I don't know that he needs to have a solid barrier. So if we're gonna have him put a fence up along the northwest property line, and then I think that fence should return down the northeast property line some distance, maybe as far as the corner of the house, but I don't see the purpose of having him take it all the way to the southeast line, because that's a wooded area. That's not where it's impactful to the neighbors, I think. You know, so, and it's an expensive thing. So it's a long way to have them put, you know, if we had them go 50 feet down that northeast line, or 75 feet, but the cost of a 250 feet of fence is considerable.
Yeah, I agree, Adam. I think that's it's all, it's what I'm suggesting is you come up Pheasant Run Road and you make a left into the driveway, right?
Yeah.
From that point where the driveway intersects with Pheasant Run, going back down Pheasant Run to the property line.
Yeah.
And then making it's, following the fence on from the inside, you make the right-hand turn and you go a certain distance down that property line in order to screen the operation from the neighbor.
Right.
Right.
So it's like 25 feet of fence along Pheasant Run Road and like another, it's like 75, 80 feet roughly to cover what he drew out in the site plan, which is where all of his logs are stacked.
Well, so I think that property line on the northwest property line
The south.
is, well, I'm looking at the thing, it says the northwest line, which is the northwest line is the line where the wood is stacked. I think it should go at least halfway down there because it's also, we're not just doing this for a visual barrier, we're doing this for sound.
Okay.
Yeah, so
halfway down that road, halfway down that
So
line.
if it goes, approximately midway down the northwest line, and then along the southwest line which is where the driveway, so it would be from the driveway going north to the northwest line.
That's right.
where it
So
turns.
just to be clear that Adam is talking about, he's calling it the northwest because it's the north 52 degrees,
Yeah.
2534, west 229, 700. That line there, he's talking about going halfway from the
would it
property.
help if I shared my screen?
No, I
We got it.
As long as Ty understands it, that's
Right.
I got it. One more question. Do you want a condition that they maintain the wooded area? So if they were to decide to take that wooded area down, at least on Emery's property, would that create are you depending on that wooded area to be there always to create a barrier? Say he needs more room and he decides to, in the future.
I don't think it'll behoove him to do that. I do think we should say something about that.
Just to maintain the existing wooded area.
Yeah.
Okay. And setbacks, you've dropped the idea of the setbacks because of the fence. Got it.
Yes.
All right, I got it.
All right, Ty, you've got it.
Yes.
So do I hear a motion to table?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, we'll take it up next month.
All right. That was a robust discussion.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's move on. We have a public hearing on the EV charging regulation. This is a public hearing, so let me read in the notice. Town of Kent Planning and Zoning Commission shall hold a public hearing via a Zoom meeting on Thursday, December 8th, 2022, beginning at 7:00 p.m. to discuss and possibly act on the addition to section 8200 to the zoning regulations with regard to electric vehicle charging facilities. Any corresponding documentation will be attached to the legal notice to be found on the town's website. At this hearing, persons may participate and be heard. Zoom meeting number can be located on the official agenda that will be filed on the Towns of Kent's website, minimum of 48 hours prior to official Zoom. Chairman, 12/1/2022. All right, so being a public hearing, we have gone through this. Is there any member of the public that would like to be heard on this regulation?
Vincent has his hand up right now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and this is more of an observation. I think this is great that you're getting this, put ahead, because obviously things are changing quicker in the world. But just the first part, talking about the definition of an electric vehicle being a motor vehicle containing a battery powered electric motor as a means of propulsion. I'm not exactly sure if it will affect the rest of the document, but a golf cart can be considered an electric vehicle. Even a hybrid could be, because it's very vague and says as a means of propulsion. It doesn't say a primary means of propulsion. So again, that might not affect the rest of the documentation. I just want to make sure that you're covering all your bases as to the definition of how everything else will work for it. So that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a reasonable comment. Certainly, it's not the intent that we have these for golf carts.
You can't legally drive a golf cart
No, you can't. It
down
has
the
to be
road.
licensed.
I don't think that we're gonna be set by people running their golf carts into town and taking up the chargers that are there for the electric cars. Maybe I'm wrong.
It does say a motor vehicle. I think that implies street legal, but maybe we should add that in there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we didn't and somebody drove their golf cart in and plugged it in, would any of us, does it have any impact? I just don't think we need to
That's true.
concern ourselves with
I
it.
mean,
Fair enough.
it's a charge situation. They're paying for it.
Daniel Robertson also has his hand up.
Daniel?
Oh, Daniel, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. We're trying to get ready for a holiday party for work, so it's kind of a disaster. So, no, thank you for the opportunity. I was just going to say, I think it's very important for the town to take action on this. I think other towns and cities have taken the benefits of the incentives that are there for multifamily, workplace, public, private, and the first round of funding is used up in many of those, and I think it'll be refunded. I know there's different, the Rescue Act and some other things will provide some additional funding, but I think the town is missing out, and it would be good to get it in place. And I think some of the other regulations you put in, not making it mandatory, but contingency for new parking lots is a good idea, but I'd really like to see it get approved. We have, for example, Kent School, they've been wanting to put it in for, 6 to 9 months. And I just think it's an attractive thing for visitors, for residents, and it ties into the town. If you're looking to make things quieter, there's nothing quieter than an electric vehicle. Even a plug-in electric vehicle is going to be quieter because the engine's not going to be running all the time. So thank you. Hope you were able to approve this regulation.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.
Good to hear it.
So as a commission, we have gone through this at length. Again, this was a public hearing to allow the public to express themselves. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to be heard?
There's no more.
No more?
Ready to motion to close? Then I will so move.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right. So I move that all in favor of closing the public hearing, signify by raising your hand. Okay. All right, so let's move on then. It's a regulation. We have discussed it, I think, at length. Does anyone have any other items to discuss on this? I was a little concerned about item number 2, but I do understand. I think it does define it, and I'm satisfied with that. That for new installations, you're simply putting in the capability to install at a later date. doesn't read that directly, but I think it is what it says. Does everybody else see it as I just expressed?
I do, Wes. So and that's ultimately what we that's where we landed. It's for me. I think I would rather have seen the EVCS installed as opposed to have it be EV capable. But what is in front of us today is what the commission was generally asked of Glenn the last time, and I don't think that there's a so I think it's right. It's not, it doesn't go as far as I would have hoped, but it does what Glenn asked us to do, what we asked Glenn to do.
So I think it doesn't preclude someone putting it in. It just simply doesn't mandate.
Correct.
Any further comment on this? I would be ready to entertain a motion.
Adam, you're on mute. Sorry.
So can I?
Sorry,
move
my
that
furnace
we-
is going, it's noisy. I'll make a motion that we accept the Kent EV Chargers Regulation 102022.
I will second that.
Right. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand. All right, so we have one regulation with the check mark.
One down, Wes.
Yes, sir. All right, so moving on to 6B2, recommendation for alternate appointment to the BOS. Adam, you had suggested Chris Harrington.
Yeah, I've suggested him, I've asked him for some years, and he's finally agreed that, you know, he tunes in, he watches a lot of the meetings, and if anybody doesn't know Chris, he owns South 7 Electric, and he's lived here most of his life, and I think he would be a good alternate.
I think he would be very serious as an alternate. Yeah.
Did you make sure to tell him not to attend so he couldn't desperately say no, no, no? Is that why?
I gave him the out again today. I keep asking him, you know, making sure that he wants to do this, and he's agreed.
All right.
Wes, may I interject something? I don't know, Chris. This has nothing to do with this recommendation or otherwise. And I am a little delinquent on this. I meant to do some work on speaking to some people. It strikes me that we are a stronger commission the more diversity we have on the commission. And one of the things that Mark served us well by was his own professional competency in the legal world. And I just feel like we should be looking for people with differing backgrounds, can bring differing things to the table. Granted, one of the primary ones is you love Kent and you want to protect Kent. But I suppose I'm kind of late to the table to bring up some names. But I do think we should keep this in mind, that we're all not looking the same, acting the same, and there's some more diversity within our group. And because we are a long group, we work a long time together, so it doesn't turn over much. And when we have that chance,
Right.
I guess I I'm too late to the table to say this, but I would have liked to have brought up some other names, and I haven't.
I don't know that we have to make that decision this evening. It would be good to have another alternate, and probably will be space will be for another alternate as well.
Hey, Ty, do you know how many? I know we have a space for one, but I think we have space for more than one alternate.
Just one.
No,
Well,
you're just one opening right now. There
So,
was some talk about, those with a lower attendance, maybe wanting to step down and open up another space, but other than that,
That's kind of what I
you're
was,
full. You're full.
I-
You have
I
one
think
opening.
maybe it's a discussion that we should have, and maybe this is not the right time. We've had alternates that don't come to the meetings.
right.
If you're going to be an alternate, I was an alternate for some years. I came to every meeting. You don't. If you're going to be an alternate, you're supposed to be at the meetings. It's fine if you miss some, but we have alternates who don't ever come to the meetings once a year, and they're taking up a place from another person. And I agree with Alex. I think that some diversity on our commission is good, and it brings some different point of views. But we can't do that if we have alternates who they're just holding the position away from other people.
I agree with Alice. I've been kind of asleep at the wheel on this, and I would like to take some more time as well. If
Sure.
we're
I
not-
mean,
If we're not in any hurry, let's do it another month.
yeah,
If we can, let's have a couple of selections.
right. Right.
I also agree that diversity on the commission is really important. I think a mix between male and female. I think a mix between conservative and more liberal is all of those things are really important. And I think that we should have, as Alice said, we've been working all together for a while, and I think we're a really strong commission. That being said, I think that Chris would be an asset. Chris is deliberative. He is certainly more conservative than me, so he's going to bring a different a different perspective to the commission. So I think he would be. I could get behind appointing Chris as an alternate, but I also understand the need to take a little bit more time. So I don't want to put a plug in for Chris. He's deliberative and he's reasonable, but he's certainly got a different perspective than I do, which I think is important. But I also think that we've got 2 regular members who are women. There's 5 of us who are male. I know that doesn't make a big difference, but in some cases it does. So I'm a big fan of diversity.
Well, to be, some of it, when I say diversity is, of course, all of the reasons you think of, but politically, I've never felt like that was a big one for us. But it's things like just the way brains work. I mean, some of you guys can look at a site plan and, it's engraved in your mind forever. And others have to figure out, is it north, south, east, or west? And then there's other people that have the legal mindset is one of the ones that how to frame issues. That's just one. So it's not just the obvious diversity, it's the diversity of background and thought. And by the way, guys, I don't have anything against your candidate, Chris, at all. It's just a comment. I really don't want you to think I do.
I didn't think you did. I
Okay.
totally understood.
I just wanted to
exactly
bring it
what
to
you said, and
attention,
don't
and I
disagree.
should have done this much sooner, I guess, Thanksgiving and everything. But anyway,
I thought you
I
were
don't
about to
think
say,
there's an
Alice,
immediate-
that you didn't have any objection to us being all men.
Yeah.
no, I wouldn't mind that either. I mean,
All right, so why don't we table that till next month?
Okay. Does that need to be a motion? Made the motion if that needed to be a motion.
Second for Matt, why don't we go ahead and approve that? Signify by raising your hand. Okay. All right. So we'll take that up next month as well. And please, if other people, I mean, the more names, the better. I also think Chris would be a great addition, but there could be others too. So we don't know yet. Now, I hope that wouldn't put off Chris.
I don't think so. I think you.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to 6B3, election of officers. It's hard for me to believe that it's been 1 year that I took over as chairman from Matt. Doesn't seem like it's been a year, but it has. It's not really something that I aspire to. It's something that I felt I needed to do, and I've done it, and I've enjoyed it. Moreover, it's engaged me in the commission, whereas I was somewhat fading. And I think this has energized me as a commission member. But I would very much like to pass that baton back to Matt. Matt has agreed that he would do it. Matt is excellent. So that would be, I guess, my referral. And it's almost returning to the way it was when Matt left. Matt was chair and I was vice chair. So upon the will of the commissioners, I would serve as vice chair. But anyway, that would be my recommendation. Any comments?
No, I like that. I'm, if you need a second nomination for Matt, is anybody else interested in being the chairman, I think is the first question.
I was going to nominate Wes again.
Thank you, Dave. And I appreciate it.
It doesn't sound like nobody else wants to do it, and Matt has agreed to do it. So I think we should vote on that, and then we can move down the line.
Yeah, it's something, again, I didn't really aspire to begin with. I do have to recuse myself often because a lot of my projects are coming before the commission. So, I mean, not that that's a huge conflict, but it does happen.
So Wes, I think you have to call a vote because you're the chairman.
All right.
Hold on, hold on.
And Matt wanted to say something.
Now you want to say something?
I just want to say what I said a couple of years ago when I took over the chairmanship from John, that, you know, I think I can do a good job. I understand the regulations, and I understand the Roberts rules, and I understand how to run a meeting. But, you know, I tend to have, you know, let's call them strong opinions about things. And I'm not sure that in some instances that makes me the right person for the chairmanship. So, but, you know, that being said, I think I can do a good job, and I think that I can run a good meeting. And if you guys can put up with my tendency to reach a conclusion and have strong opinions, then that's okay with me.
Well, I think you do run a good meeting, but of course, you have only a single vote.
Much as I might want 4. All right, that's,
So I would move that Matt Winter become chairman. I don't know if I can nominate myself, but I would certainly serve as vice chair.
I'll nominate Wes for vice chair. As vice chair, I'm going to nominate Wes as vice chair.
There we go.
I will second both of those nominations.
All right. All in favor of that? Okay. Matt?
There's another position. Who is,
Right?
That was Mark. Mark was actually the secretary treasurer. Both of those positions can be filled by one person, and Mark Weingarten filled that position previously.
I'd forgotten that needs to be filled, right? Right.
I'm happy to do it, but anybody can do it. I was the treasurer and secretary for a long time, for some years, and it's not, you don't do a whole lot.
It's not that onerous.
Aren't you the designated survivor?
You have to run a meeting if one of the other two aren't there.
All right. So you're in attendance, and that's a good thing. So I would nominate.
But if Karen or David want to do it, or Alice wants to do it, it's fine with me.
I will nominate Adam, or I will second the nomination if somebody already nominated him.
and Karen, you're okay not having that position?
Me? Totally okay.
All right. All right. So all in favor of that? Of Adam becoming.
Can I vote for myself?
Okay. So I think that fills the slate. All right, 6B4 bylaws. We went through that last year, and I think we made one change to section 5 back then, which was to allow the chairman to appoint someone else as temporarily as chairman, or who was a member or alternate. I don't have any problem with keeping that same language. We installed that last year. That's
But there's no other changes. There's no changes actually between last year and this year.
no,
The bylaws are as they have been.
correct. That's right.
The bylaws where we would put in language about people not attending, or would that go somewhere else? And I'm not saying we should do it this time, but maybe we plant the seed for next year's, so it has some time to percolate.
Some towns have overall policies about that for all their commissions. I'm not sure if that's that or not.
I think, I would hate to put on something that was, I think if you're on a commission, people show up.
Right.
Everybody who I know that's a commissioner and has been a commissioner for all of these years, comes to the meetings.
I think it was more specific to alternates that weren't coming on a.
Well, we've had, so the problem with the alternate is we've had a couple of alternates over the years who don't attend. And so that's a problem certain times of the year when people can't be there, or if it turns out there's 2 or 3 commissioners who have to recuse themselves, or it happens to be a meeting where we're a little low and then we don't have another alternate. to step up and do their job because they don't come to the meetings.
I can't remember a time where we ever didn't have a quota.
Right.
But once this year, we had to call, we actually had to make an effort to call and make sure that the alternate showed up.
Yeah. That's the only time I can remember that happening.
Okay.
And we knew
Right.
that ahead of time. I'd also, back to my thing about new commissioners and backgrounds. I think the alternate position, at least from my own experience and 2 or 3 of you that I know, is a wonderful way to learn what this is all about.
Absolutely. Right.
If you, it's unbelievable. It's, in the classroom learning and
It's kind of entry level. Yeah.
yeah, it's the greatest.
Right.
I don't know what that means, but I just wanted to say it.
I think that's how, if you're interested in serving your community in
Yeah.
some way, and you're interested in being on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and you have no idea what that means. Most
Yeah.
people don't. I certainly had no idea what that meant.
Right.
And I came on, I was an alternate for a few years.
Yeah, me too.
Right.
But that's why the alternate position is really important. And if someone's not, or it's not being used that way, it's kind of sad.
I agree.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion to approve then?
Approve one.
The,
Bylaws.
I think we need a motion to accept them.
sorry, I'll move we accept the bylaws then,
Current bylaws, right, as written.
as written.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Okay, we'll take that up again next year. Okay, staff reports.
Yeah, not a very, very active month. I mean, with the holidays setting in now, I think the economy kind of had a little bit of an impact. Now we've got the holidays setting in, so it's been somewhat quiet. Been doing other stuff in the office as far as organizing and looking forward to the future with new technology advances like that, getting ready for the budget season, but not a lot to report. We did get the POCD final version up on the website, although it's not effective yet. It's up there and the links are there. I think it's super. I think Glenn did a great job. He has all the interactive links set up with the maps. And if you have a chance to take a look at it, check it out. Let me know if you see any discrepancies. I was going to have maybe 25 copies. It's very expensive to print it. And quite honestly, often the offices end up with piles of these books that never go anywhere. So I was going to print like 25 copies once everybody was satisfied and it was fully effective, just, for the members and the offices and, posterity and whatnot. But I wasn't going to spend a lot of money on that.
Right, great.
Okay.
So I don't think we have any committees outstanding, right?
No.
I think they've all been retired. But we do have this upcoming start of the regulation next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
And it's going to be a lot of work. And I think it's important. All right. Other communications, administrative permits, I think, and compliances. We've seen that. You're right. There wasn't a whole lot going on last month. Any comments on the newsletter? How about the budget in July?
Yeah, I mean, it seems a little bit out of whack with the health. I think that's the crossover between employees and where we're at and the staff. It's got to just kind of work its way out. Other than that, everything seems on track.
Yeah. Terrific. I mean, we're sticking to our budget. And that's,
Yeah, I mean, you're at 82% for health insurance, so somewhere in the transition, I'm assuming that wasn't considered as part of the budget. I'm not sure how that happened. Honestly, I think that, Donna was taking the insurance, I'm taking the insurance, we crossed paths at one point, so maybe that's where the spike happened.
right, right.
I don't think
I think
he
the
said
difference
that figure.
You had family, Ty, and it was just me and plus one. I think you plus two.
Right, so
And
I
that-
mean,
That
It-
might be the difference.
I don't think there was probably any way that you could have you had no idea who was gonna get hired or what they were gonna take for benefits, so, next year it'll be back on track.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, Adam.
Yeah, you didn't know she was in the background, did you, Adam?
I saw her name there, but she wasn't there. And
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm back.
all right, that's better.
Thanks. Thanks. Good to be back.
So my eyes crossed on the POCD implementation tables.
Me too.
You can zoom in, way in.
Right.
It is
I
very
think-
dense.
I think, there's a lot of information there, but I think it's great. I think that's, I think that the fact that Glenn went back and is now telling us what we committed to do as far as the different chapters in the POCD. I think it's great. I think it's a roadmap. It'll not only keep us on task, but it'll keep the rest of the community on task. think it's
May I
great.
have a Gantt chart, please?
Yes, Gantt chart and critical path.
And a yep, let's figure out how we're getting it done.
Okay, Ty, do we need to go into executive session?
No, there's nothing new to report on that,
Excellent.
of those.
All right, then I guess that only leaves adjournment.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I will second.
All right,
I do have a bit of news, though.
and
I'm moving to Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
get out of town.
I am.
Really?
You may have you realized I was doing a bunch of traveling for work, and I got
I
tired
would
of.
say that's an announcement, David.
Is that an announcement? I was going to send a letter, but I figured I would have to say it in person.
So when would you be doing this?
They made me an offer I couldn't refuse, so I decided to take a sabbatical for a few years. So I'm keeping the property here, and I'm obviously staying involved with the brewery and stuff. But I don't think I can be on the POCD anymore. I'm sorry, on the planning and zoning, because I will probably not be a resident.
Wow, wow. And
So
so I'm assuming that you'll let us know what the dates are.
yeah, this is probably going to be my last meeting, so I'm going to I will send an email.
Wow.
But I want to tell you in person, and try not to break up. I'm leaving a lot of things behind here, so.
But
I
Dave,
will-
you have been a terrific member of the commission.
Oh, thank you. I do want to say I really have learned a tremendous amount, and it was a real honor to participate in our self-governance. I'm really impressed with how much time and energy we all put into even little things, and how gracefully all handle big things, and everyone's willingness to contribute. It really has been an amazing experience, and it's very difficult to make this decision, because I thought I was going to be settling down here for forever, but I have one last change ahead of me, it turned out. So
Well, congratulations. You sound like you're happy.
it will be nice. I'm renting a townhouse, and I'll have zero property management responsibilities at all. I'm very much looking forward to that after managing a 52-acre property with multiple things going on. So I guess I'll still have responsibility for it, but I won't be residing here anymore. But hopefully I can still connect to an occasional meeting, lurk in the background.
Well, David, thank you for your time and doing this publicly in front of the commission. That speaks well.
I don't want to hide behind an email. I'm gonna miss all of you, and I will miss the Thursday night meetings. It's been really unexpectedly special part of my time in Kent. So
Terrific.
I'll be back someday.
All right.
Good.
Good luck, buddy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good luck with everything. Good luck.
Congrats.
I was just gonna, before that, I was just gonna nominate you for the secretary position.
I probably would have volunteered myself much earlier.
Uh,
Yeah.
Thought I didn't want to do that because I figured this decision was coming. So good luck to all of you in wrestling with all the decisions you'll have to wrestle with. But I know you'll do a great job.
Good luck in Cedar Rapids.
Thank you.
Buy a Stetson.
Somehow I don't know.
I've lived lots of places on this globe, exotic and not. I've never lived in the Midwest, so I'll see how it goes. It'll be a fun adventure.
There you go.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Yeah. Good night, all.
Well,
Good, everybody.